The BRICS have just had, I believe it's their 17th annual meeting in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, hosted by the leader there, Mr. Lula. Before I talk about the significance of their meetings and what they've decided to do sooner, some later, I want to also mention a milestone that they achieved just a few weeks ago, when it was announced that they just crossed $1 trillion. That is the value of the trade among members of the BRICS. $1 trillion worth of trade. Why is that important? Well, it's important because that's what the BRICS is about. Doing international trade on their own, out from under the domination of the United States. And that's indeed why the BRICS are important. They are not anti-American, as Mr. Trump casually likes to say. That's really not relevant to them. What they are interested in doing is becoming a part of a world economy that isn't anymore dominated by the US dollar as the global currency, by the US military as a kind of policeman for what trade can or cannot happen, as the source of goods they have to buy, markets they have to sell into, money they have to borrow, investments they have to secure. The United States came out of World War II dominant. All the other potential competitors had been destroyed economically and often also militarily and politically by World War II. And by that I mean Japan, China, Russia, Britain, France, Italy, Germany, Canada, you name it, they could not compete for one reason or another. The United States, king of the hill. Now, of course, any reasonable person with even a minimal grasp of history would have known that these were very special, very odd circumstances, and that the dominance of the United States, the dollar as the global currency, the United States as the producer of all producers, whether it was manufacturing or services or financial instruments, didn't matter. The U.S. dominated. It had the atom bomb. It had the overwhelming military, etc. Anyone with a good sense of history would have known this can't last. The advanced economies like Germany and Japan would come back. Yes, they would take a while, but they had the brain power, they had the institutions. And then there were the countries in Western Europe that had also achieved quite high levels of development. And there were the dark horses, if you like, Russia, China. No one quite knew whether they would come back from their destruction, and if so, how quickly. No one imagined what the Russians could do, and no one even had the faintest idea of what the Chinese proved they could do after World War II. Well, Americans were a little naive. They indulged themselves in believing it would last forever. Well, it didn't. And we now know that. But the BRICS is the most organized global manifestation. And that's why it's important to take note of the annual meeting they just had in Rio and the fact that they are bigger than they have ever been before, that they're doing more trade with one another than they ever did before, that they're borrowing money and making investments in one another more than they ever did before. And all of that is happening outside of and out from under the control, the domination of the United States. This is not to be confused with a lot of verbiage about de-dollarization. That's talk that's mostly symbolic. At this point, there isn't a substitute for the US dollar, could be the alternative they go to. They are looking to settle their payments with one another in each other's currencies and working out a way to keep track of all of that. And the technology, blockchain, and others now exists to make that relatively straightforward. And they are going in that direction. Not to produce another currency, other than the dollar. We're not at that point. That may develop, but we're not there. And that's not a priority of the BRICS. Even when they talk about it, it's clear they know that that's far in the future. They have to build the foundation. And what that means is economic development. And economic development based on their needs as the priority, not how they fit into a global economy dominated by the United States. That used to be what development, if you were a poor country in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and you went to Washington or you went to New York and you needed investment capital, or you needed to open a market, or you needed to secure supplies, you always got treated by saying, how can this thing you want be consistent with what we here want in New York and Washington? And a compromise was the outcome. You got something for your canal in Nigeria. You got something for your medical system in Paraguay, but you also had to do all of that within the framework of loan agreements that the United States imposed on you, trade agreements, or you had to be sure not to do something that the United States didn't want, because if you did, then they wouldn't be so forthcoming on whatever it is you needed. What the BRICS is about is creating within the world economy a new and different part of it. And that part is the part not subject to the United States' direct or indirect economic, political, and military power. Do they escape from that 100%? No. The United States remains a global force. I mean, there are three major wars in the world today: Ukraine, Gaza, and Iran, and the United States is a central player in every one of them. And before that, we had Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam, and I could go on. So the world is not free of the United States and will not be for quite some time. But the relative position of the United States is shrinking, and it has been for 50 years. Only it's going faster now because the institutions are being formed and developed and nurtured as we speak. It is no longer appropriate to talk about the United States being challenged by the economic powerhouse that China has become. That's still true, but it isn't the main story. The BRICS are the main story. China is the key part of that, no question. But the BRICS are much bigger than just China. And they are the new phenomena of the world economy and need to be understood in that way. They are quite different one from the other. They have clashes in their cultures, their religions, their political ambitions, their military capabilities. They have arguments. They will have more of them. They don't all look at the Israeli activity in Gaza in quite the same way, and so on. But whatever those differences, they are carving out a space in the world economy that is a new option for everyone. And I mean everyone, every company working internationally, every business, and every country is rethinking strategy. How do we grow this business? How do we diversify the people we borrow from, the people we sell to, the alliances we as a country make? All of those fundamental decisions about world affairs are being remade as I speak to you. Every country, every business is realizing that the world economy in which they are groping their way to a future is in the process of a fundamental change, and the BRICS is the absolute core of that. The BRICS together now account for about 35% of the world's total output of goods and services, 35% of the aggregate GDP of this planet. The G7, that's the United States and its 6 major allies, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy, only account for 27, 28%. So the BRICS are already a bigger, richer, wealthier part of the world economy. That's why every company has to rethink its strategy. You can't focus on the G7, which for many of them was what they did kind of automatically for the last 75 years. That's not happening anymore. If you send a trade delegation to Washington and New York, which many of them do still, as soon as they're finished in Washington and New York, they go to New Delhi or Beijing or Sao Paulo in Brazil, and they present the same project. And they say, who can help us more? And the BRICS have gone out of their way, as I'm sure they will in the future, to carve their place in the world economy. And they know that the way to do that is to offer a better deal than you can get in the West. They're not stupid. They know the game. It's just like if a new brand of soda pop is available in your neighborhood, it might offer a cheaper can or a cheaper bottle than the traditional soda pop in order to get you to try it, in order to get you to see that it's good, etc., etc. That's what's going on. Conventional marketing, if you like. But it's now clear that the world is never going to be what it was in the last 75 years. Peculiarly, oddly, anomalously in the history of the world economy, dominated by one country. Even the British, in the era of the British Empire, before the American Empire, didn't have the kind of control, never had the 800 military bases that the United States maintained, etc. So in a way, the United States peaked, its empire peaked, and it is now being challenged by somebody who has already surpassed the United States in number of ways. Militarily, you can see it in Ukraine. Economically, you can see it in China. Technologically, see that in China too. And I could go on. But that's my point. Pay attention to the BRICS. Don't dismiss them the way Mr. Trump does. That looks like ignorant behavior of someone who wants to bully his way through by pretending none of this is all that important and threatening the BRICS, which Mr. Trump also did. He indeed threatened countries that, quote, align themselves with the BRICS, whatever exactly that means, might be subject to tariffs or who knows what else. I believe for the first time, the meeting of the BRICS in Rio de Janeiro had as one of its participants, I don't think they had the right to vote as full members did, but they were there and welcome to participate in all the discussions, was the country called Mexico. The chickens are coming home to roost, and we all better pay attention because it's going to affect everything. Mr. Trump is destroying millions of Americans' lives with these massive cuts, but he's going further than other Republicans dared to do, and so pandering to the businessman community, because the businessmen, they're the ones who think like this. If only I can pay the worker less, if only I can pay lower taxes, how much better off I will be. And then comes the hustle. And that's how we'll all be better off. How convenient. The one way we're all better off is the one that happens to profit you right away, immediately, with low wages and low taxes. When you lay off tens of thousands of public employees, besides the cruelty, besides the damage to all of their lives, you know what those people have to do? They have to go into the private sector because that's where the jobs are. There are no jobs now in government. That's what Mr. Trump is seeing to. So you know what? They're going to go into the private sector where they're offering themselves at lower wages and poorer working conditions in order to get a job, which it drives it down for the private sector. All of the business community is applauding this leader who, by going further with the groups that you have to get the votes of, has been able to deliver to them what they really care about. And if you look back at the first presidency, you can see it there. The one economic act he got done in 4 years of presidency was the Tax Cut Act of December 2017, which cut the taxes of corporations and the rich. At the end of a 30-year period in American history where wealth and income had been redistributed from the middle and the bottom to the people at the top. They therefore needed the tax cut less than at any point in history. He delivered it to them anyway. And that's what got him reelected this time. And he just knew he has to go ever further in giving his base what they need in order to do what he's there to do. And believe me, turning on our economic allies, Canada, Mexico, Denmark in the fight over Greenland, little Panama, he is doing what you're doing when you're salvaging a declining empire. You're turning on everybody, allies, friends, who cares? And snatching this from that one and snatching that. It's a short-term policy. But in the long run, you know what it reminds me of? An old story. It's very cold in the house and everybody's freezing. So one of the people in the household gets the idea, well, we've run out of wood. Why don't we take the clapboards off the side of the house, they're made out of wood, and feed them into the furnace. They'll burn and we'll be warm. And they do that. And the next time there's a blizzard, they're all even colder than they were at the first. That's what we are doing in this country. And covering it over with slogans of America first will not do the job when the excrement hits the cooling equipment.
How about BRICS? You know, the BRIC states, there are like 6 of them, and they were trying to destroy our dollar. They were going to say, they wanted to create a new currency. They probably wanted to use the yuan. China, they wanted to use the yuan. And Biden said, well, this is a tough situation. There's not much we can do about that. We can't help that. I said, oh, we can help it. So when I came in, the first thing I said is any BRIC state that even mentions the destruction of the dollar will be charged a 150% tariff. And we don't want your goods. We don't want to partake. And the BRIC states just broke up. I don't know what the hell happened to them. We haven't heard from the BRIC states lately. But he said that wasn't much we could do about it. There was a lot. It took once, and literally, they said, sir, what about the BRIC states? They're going to take over the dollar, the sanctity of the dollar. They're going to create a new currency to rule the world. I said, no, they're not.
Yeah, I was struck by that speech of Mr. Trump's as well, because it's such a wonderful example, not that we need many more, of when he is talking right through his, I don't know what, and I'm going to be polite, just making it up as he goes. The BRICS have broken up. There's not the slightest shred of evidence to suggest it. There are 2 kinds of BRIC membership, full partnership, and then a second category that's a little less. But it's the idea that you're in there for a while and then you'll be lifted up to the full partnership. A full partnership countries, I believe, now number, it's either 9 or 11, and then the other one is either the 11 or the 9. But you put them all together, and that's what you should be doing, it's over 20 countries. They include a majority of the people on this planet. They are the leaders of the majority of people. Somewhere between 50 and 60% of the world's population lives in BRICS countries. You know what the percentage of the world's population is that lives in the United States? 4.5%. Mr. Trump, you are a mouse. They are an elephant in terms of population. But wait a minute, that's not the same as economic power. You're right. So let's take a look at that. The United States and its 6 fellow members of the world leader used to be called the G7, the group of 7. When you add up all the total output of goods and services of the United States and the 6 others, and the 6 others, by the way, Canada, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, and Britain. When you put all that together, about 28, maybe 29% of the world's output. You put together the GDP, the gross output of goods and services of the BRICS today. Ready? It's about 38%. It's not even close anymore. The BRICS are a richer block of countries than the United States and its allies are. In other words, what we got used to in the second half of the 20th century, U.S. dominance, isn't there anymore, Mr. Trump. And I'm convinced that what he is doing is a performance even he understands. Yeah, he bloviates and says this nonsense about the BRICS being gone and how Biden was weak and he is strong, an endless repetition that he seems to enjoy each and every time. But this is a fantasy, and somewhere he knows it. Why do I say that? Because he looks at America and says correctly, it's in decline. Oh, he uses blustery words. They don't respect us anymore, or they're laughing at us anymore. Yeah, he has his way of doing it, and he's going to fix it all by putting America first. But forget all that for a moment and just recognize with me that he understands it's in trouble. He's going to blame it all on Mr. Biden. That's cheap politics. He knows that he was as responsible in his time as Mr. Biden was in his, or if he doesn't know it, he should. And now here comes the punchline. Somewhere he understands, and the people around him do too, that the United States lost the war in Vietnam back in the 1970s. They lost the war much later in Afghanistan. Vietnam is run by the North Vietnamese Communist Party and its associates. They were the enemy in 1975. Afghanistan is ruled by the Taliban. They were the enemy when the United States invaded there. We have lost the war in Ukraine. We certainly didn't win the one in Iraq. Wow. The trajectory isn't good. For all of those wars, we dared not, as a nation, tax our people because the opposition to the war would have gone through the roof if Americans had to pay for it, not just with young men and women dying, and not just with all the wasted resources, but with a tax bill on top of it. So they were paid for by printing money, borrowing and printing money. And so now our deficit as a country has gone through the roof, in excess of $1 trillion a year. Our debts as a nation far ahead of our total output of goods and services. So they knew something had to be done. And here again, Mr. Trump was willing to go much further. He took a step back, looked at Europe, looked at the BRICS, looked at the fact that the BRICS are what saved Russia in this war. You want to know why Russia won the war in Ukraine? It's not just that the Russians have a good army. Clearly they do. But it's that they were able to survive the one thing the United States and Europe had to throw at them: the sanctions, the threat of not buying oil and gas from Russia, which turned around and sold it to their BRICS allies. There's the power of BRICS for you. That's why you've lost in Ukraine. And Mr. Trump, give him the credit he deserves, Mr. Trump got it. And he said, we need a change. We are allied with the Europeans against the Russians with their allies, China and India. That means we are, to be blunt, betting on the wrong horse. And he's dropping Canada, Mexico, and Europe, and he's switching, gonna try to build a relationship with Russia. None of this may work. Nothing he is doing, and that includes laying off government workers. There's no guarantee these things will work. Not at all. The resistance to them is everywhere. It's happening across this country against the firings, and it's happening in Europe and Canada and Mexico, who don't want to be thrust aside as the United States approaches Russia. The only people who must be smiling as they sip their vodka are the Russians, as they watch the disintegration of their adversary, because this disintegration is provoked by Mr. Trump, who, again, to give him the credit he deserves, understands something has to change, because the trajectory we were on was like being on a train heading full speed into a stone wall. Somebody has to jump up there, do something. Mr. Trump is making his effort very conventional, very much designed to help the employer class, the rich and the corporations, as Republicans always do, but to do it with much more gusto, much more theatric. It's a long shot, but he understands time is running out. Let me drive home that Mr. Trump got into the presidency by being the guy who's nasty, who refers to Mexicans as rapists, who all the things we know about him, being the naughty, being the one who says what others dare not say, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. That's his method of being. That's brought him to the White House. Why expect him to change? He'd have to understand that getting there is a different project from being there. And there's no sign that he has such an idea.